After reading and reflecting on the body ritual among the Nagrima by Horace Minor, it was interesting to read. It took a while to understand at first, but after I understood it, I saw the parallels to the American society, but almost in like a backwards way. Because first off, the Nagrima backwards is America, and their founder, backwards, their nation originated by a culture hero, that spelled backwards is Washington, which is a prominent character in the American history, and it's also the country's capital backwards, which I found interesting. And like, there's many parallels within the article, and it talks about how every household has one or more shrines devoted to this purpose, and talking about how the human body is ugly and its natural tendency is to like deflect that. And so like I thought that as like showers almost. And when they're talking about like their teeth, they said that they take a small bundle of hog hairs, which I thought that as like a toothbrush almost. And like going to the holy mouth man, that's like the dentist in American culture. And like it says how men would scrape their face with a sharp instrument, that could be shaving their face. Or it says that the medicine men can, in their temple, which I took as either like a hospital or, depending on like the way you're looking at it, it could be a church as well. And it said they perform elaborate ceremonies, which could be like a surgery. And then it says that they like want rich gifts back to the people, which is like a form of payment. There's also the medicine men are doctors. The scripts they talk about are prescriptions. The herbalists are like pharmacists, and the charms are drugs, like in our society. The charm box that they mentioned is almost like a medicine cabinet, or like in our society, like when you feel something is wrong, you go to the medicine cabinet to see if there's anything to fix it. And they talked about preventing conception by magic materials, which is kind of something like we have here. You could either, like, women can go on birth control, or there's different surgeries that can prevent reproducing. So I found all those parallels from the American culture very interesting. An event that wasn't touched on in the body ritual among the Nakrima article would be voting. And I feel like voting is a very important event that happens within the United States. It's a huge deal, whether it's a local voting or the national voting for president and such. That could be seen as, even though all countries vote, it could be seen as foreign and confusing from the outside, because here anyone can vote as long as you're 18 and registered. And most people in some countries cannot vote due to simple things like the color of their skin or their gender or their ethnicity or anything like that. And it's connected to a U.S. worldview or value, because one of the things we value most in this country, like one of the foundations that this country's society is based on, is freedom. And one of the biggest freedoms that we have is being able to vote, like being able to pick who either leads your town you live in, or who makes the decisions to pass laws, or even who runs the country. And in some places, that's not the option. It's kind of, this person becomes the leader and everyone else has to kind of conform to it. But here we have the ability to pick who leads us, so then it's like a majority, obviously majority wins, so then majority of the country is happy in their pick. And so I feel like that's a very important event to touch on, because it may be confusing to the outsiders, because they're like, why do they get to vote and we don't? Or like, why do people who may not be educated on the topic get to vote? But that just all traces back to how the United States is built on freedom. One of the biggest things within this country is freedom. So I feel like that's a very important event, and it could be seen as weird from the outside, but it wasn't touched on in the Nakrima article, so I feel like that one's pretty important. Voting has not been an easy journey within the United States, and it has a long, long history, and it's definitely not to its final destination yet. There's still some changes to be made, but it's definitely made immense progress. In 2019, the Carnegie Corporation released an article about the voting rights and like a short history of it, and some of the things that the United States have had to gone through to get to where it is now. About in the 1700s, when voting first came into play, it was mainly white male landowners who were allowed to vote. And things like a poll tax and like literacy tests were in place to make sure that people of lesser education and lower incomes were not able to vote because they couldn't pay the poll taxes or they couldn't pass the literacy tests. And that was clearly an issue. And then in the 1800s, there was the 15th Amendment that got passed, and it's where you can't be denied to vote depending on your race, your ethnicity, anything like that. But the South was still using these barriers like the poll taxes and the literacy test to make sure that people of, like I said, like people of lesser education or lower income did not have the ability to vote. And then women still also couldn't vote at this point. And in 1920, the 19th Amendment got passed to where now women are allowed to vote, which that was huge, and that was a big change in history. And in the 1960s, the South were ramping up these barriers, making it harder and harder for different people of different ethnicities to vote, which made the voting clearly not as effective as it could be because not all people had a say. And then in the 1960s, 1966 to be exact, the Supreme Court ruled poll taxes and things like that unconstitutional, which definitely gave a lot more people the ability to vote. And since then, there's been changes here and there made that allows everyone to vote. And it's still not perfect, but it's to where if you're registered to vote, you do have a say in who gets to run the country or run your area or anything that you need to vote on. These voting changes that have been made throughout United States history, I feel like has been beneficial to our culture as a whole because of many reasons, and everyone in the country will feel heard. Like, people will not want to listen to a leader that they had no choice in voting for. Like, if they had at least the opportunity to put their say in, then they'll feel more at peace, and it's good for the country morale. More people are happy when they have the freedom to vote. And that's like such a huge decision for this country. More people are happy, and another huge thing is that new perspectives are brought in and different point of views. It's important to know all point of views to figure out the most efficient way to do something, and in and out of office as well. So more people can get in office to make changes they feel are needed to be made, and people can vote to see those changes be made. And that's a huge thing because more perspectives, the better. It's more understanding different, because in the United States there's so many different cultures, so many different beliefs, so many different ideas, that it's important that all these different perspectives are in, so everyone feels heard and everyone feels like they're living in a country that they belong in. And it shows like that the country does have freedom, because we can't say that we are a country who believes in this freedom if not everyone can vote, like a simple basic right. And so everyone having the ability to vote is huge to the American culture because it shows the freedom that we pride ourselves on. And it encourages people to learn more and get involved. So when people have the ability to vote, they want to learn about all the different contenders, what they're going to do for our country or what they're going to do for our state. And it helps them learn more and get involved with the elections, get voting, like exercising their right. And I feel like that's a huge thing, and it's been very beneficial to society. And I feel like if everyone didn't have the right to vote, it would be detrimental to society because people would revolt, people would be upset, and it would not be a country that we would want to live in.